the explainer. Today, we are diving deep into a really powerful section of the Old Testament, Deuteronomy, chapters 7 through 9. We're going to uncover the foundation of a divine covenant, the super strict rules of a conquest, and a timeless lesson on the power of memory and leadership.
So let's start with this one sentence because it's really the bedrock for everything else that happens. It sets up the core identity of the Israelite people, and it's an identity that's not based on anything they did, but on a divine choice. It's just a powerful declaration that says their whole purpose flows directly from this chosen status.
Okay, so what does it actually mean to be a treasured possession? Let's unpack the why behind this whole choice and get into the specific terms of the covenant, that sacred agreement between God and Israel. Check out the contrast here. It's pretty stark. The text goes out of its way to say that Israel wasn't chosen because they were big or powerful. Actually, it was the exact opposite. They were the smallest of all the nations. The choice was all about God's faithfulness to a promise of steadfast love that he made generations earlier. So this is a commitment based on divine loyalty, not human strength. And this covenant wasn't just some abstract spiritual idea. No, it came with tangible, real-world benefits. Obedience was tied directly to the community flourishing. We're talking everything from huge harvests to healthy families. And that's a world away from all the diseases they'd known back in Egypt. The message was crystal clear. If you are faithful, your whole society will thrive. All right, let's shift gears and talk about the mission itself. Taking over the Promised Land wasn't just a simple military campaign. It was a divine mandate, and it came with a set of very, very strict, non-negotiable rules of engagement. Okay, now we're getting into what is, for a lot of people, a really tough part of this text. The command to completely destroy the Canaanite nations can be pretty jarring to read. So to understand it in its own context, let's look at the specific reasons the text itself gives for such a drastic action. So the way the text frames this isn't just as a war. It's positioned as a divine judgment against the wickedness of these nations. And every single command, from don't make treaties and don't intermarry to destroying their entire religious setup, it was all designed to create a complete and total separation. The goal was to prevent any kind of spiritual compromise. And to really get how serious this was, you have to understand what these Asherah poles were. They weren't just decorative statues, they were these central symbols in a religious system that was dedicated to a fertility goddess. The command to burn them was basically a command to completely erase the spiritual influence of the Canaanite religion from the land. But then, right in the middle of all these huge theological commands, you get this super practical, almost ecological, reason for how things should go down. The conquest was supposed to be gradual. And why? Because if they wiped out all the people at once, the land would go wild, and dangerous animals might take over and become a threat to the Israelites. It's a really fascinating mix of divine command and practical strategy. But finally getting to a land flowing with milk and honey, that presented a totally new kind of danger. This one wasn't an external enemy, it was an internal one. The temptation to get proud, to think you did it all yourself, and ultimately to forget where all your blessings came from in the first place. But before they could even get to that land of abundance, they had to go through something else first. 40 years. 40 long years of wandering in the wilderness. And according to the text, this period of hardship wasn't an accident. It had a very specific character-forming purpose. Now, the text makes a really crucial distinction here. The trials they faced in the desert, hunger and thirst, they weren't seen as temptations that were designed to make them fail. No, they were holy tests designed to show what was really in their hearts, to humble them, and to get them ready for what was next. A test builds you up, while a temptation is meant to tear you down. And this is the key lesson from their time in the wilderness. God let them get hungry, and then boom, he provided manna, a food they had never seen before. The point wasn't just about filling their stomachs. It was to teach them a much deeper truth, that just having food isn't enough. Real life, true dependence, is found in God and his word. So after all that, did they learn their lesson about remembering God? Well, let's talk about the golden calf. This is probably the most infamous example of their failure, right at the foot of Mount Horeb, which you might also know as Sinai. This is the description God gives them, stiff-necked. It's such a powerful metaphor from farming. Just picture a stubborn ox that plants its feet and absolutely refuses to be led by the farmer. That's how Israel was acting, obstinately resisting God's guidance, just digging in their heels in rebellion. I mean, the timing here is just staggering. Moses is literally up on the mountain receiving the terms of the covenant written by the hand of God, and at that exact same time, the people down below are committing the ultimate betrayal. They melt down their gold and make an idol that looks like Apis, an Egyptian god. When Moses comes back and sees this, his act of smashing the tablets, it's this dramatic physical proof that the covenant has been completely shattered. Now, here's a super interesting detail you might miss about those tablets. They weren't like page 1 and page 2 of the law. They were two identical copies of the entire covenant, which was common practice for ancient treaties. One copy was for the sovereign, that's God, and the other was for the vassal, that's Israel. So when Moses smashed them, it was a symbol that the people's actions had completely voided the agreement.
And really, the story of rebellion and a broken covenant could have just ended right there. The people could have been destroyed. But it didn't end there, and the reason why comes down to the actions of one leader. In a moment of just white-hot anger, God was ready to destroy the people. But Moses steps in, and he doesn't make excuses for them. Instead, he pleads for them, praying earnestly, even putting his own life on the line. This act of intercession, of standing in the gap, it becomes the turning point for this entire story.
And this, right here, brings us to the core lesson of these chapters. The story isn't just about obedience or conquest. It's about a very specific kind of leadership. It highlights the incredible power and the absolute necessity of intercession, of someone willing to stand in the gap and pray for their community, especially when it messes up. And so this ancient story from Deuteronomy, it leaves us with a very modern and very personal challenge. It pushes us to look around at our own lives, our families, our workplaces, our communities, and ask this simple but really powerful question. In a world that's full of challenges, who is standing in the gap? Who has taken on the mission to pray,